everybody! Today we are going to be talking about Blood Red Road by Moira Young. So this book is about a girl named Saba, and she's grown up in the desert, the Dustlands, with her younger sister, her twin brother, and her father. Her mother died in childbirth like 9 years before the book starts. And not a huge spoiler here, the first day out into the book, her father is killed and her brother is kidnapped. So she goes on this adventure to find her brother and bring him home. She meets a lot of really interesting characters along the way. There's Jack, who's a really handsome thief. She meets the Free Hawks, which are these really cool, like, band of girl warriors. And she meets some rather interesting villains as well. So it's about her adventure through these Dustlands and through this basically destroyed, I think it's the United States, I'm not sure, but there's all this cool, like, let's get into it. So let's get into world building, which is what the first topic I was going to talk about anyway. World building is fantastic. It's basically this destroyed land that probably used to be our world now, and then there's all this interesting technology. They call it wrecker technology, and I'm guessing the wreckers are like the people who wrecked the world with their technology, so now they live in this very kind of primitive world. I guess, well, they have guns, but that's about as high-tech as it gets. So it's kind of like very Wild Wild West, which I loved. So, moving on, the writing style of this book. I want to start off by talking about this because it is probably the most distinctive thing about this book, and that's that it's written in dialect. The entire book is written in this very uneducated, like leaving the G's off of verbs. It's still a very straightforward way of speaking. There's not a whole lot of description involved. It's very clean cut, this happened, and this happened, and this happened, this happened, and this is how I felt about it. There's no, weird imagery or anything, which is a really interesting change because I've just been reading a lot of dystopian novels that are written in third person, and they've got all this description and metaphors and similes and stuff, and so switching over to this was quite a shock for me, but it was amazing because it's so consistent, which I think is one of the best things a book can be, is consistent. So I was blown away. It's really great. It gets a little bit at times just because she doesn't use quotation marks around what's being said, so sometimes it's hard to tell if something's being said out loud or if it's just a thought in her head, but that wasn't a huge deal. I cannot say enough good things about the writing style of this book. It is freaking fantastic. So characters. Saba as a main character is fantastic. I really loved her. She was really intriguing, and as a narrator, I was interested to hear her story. A lot of time in YA, I will be reading a first-person story, and the whole time I'm just like, I don't care. I wish it was written from this character's point of view. I don't get anything out of it. But from this book, it's absolutely essential. I loved it. And Saba's a really cool main character because she is very stubborn. She's very set in her goals, straightforward. She's not going to beat around the bush. She just took me in from page one. I was so excited to read about her, and it was phenomenal. Some things that, every character has to have their flaws, and so I definitely, for a while, was kind of upset. She treats her younger sister terribly, but it really, really pays off because the character development there and the relationship that develops between them is so just like, it just warms my heart. It's wonderful. I loved it. Speaking of her little sister, Emmy's adorable little 9-year-old who runs off on this adventure with her, won't take no for an answer. She's such a great supporting character. Other characters that I loved, Jack, who is the main love interest, and he's very, very cute in my imagination. He takes his shirt off a couple times. It's kind of nice for any of you guys who like that. He is the perfect foil for Saba, but he's also very similar to her, so he's very stubborn, and he's very goal-oriented, and he's a really strong guy. Like, he can go through anything and come out just fine and looking really fine too. So, it's all good. But yeah, he's been through a lot. He's been on a lot of adventures. He has some very interesting friends. So we meet up with Ike, and I think his name is Tomo, Tomo's deaf. He's like a 14-year-old deaf kid, and Ike is his friend from ages ago. And so they join in the adventure, and Ike's like, I just imagine him as this like kind of big dude with like a big beard and kind of a beer belly, and he's just laughing all the time. He's He's a great character. I loved him. Other characters, the Freehawks, which are the group of girl warriors, they're really fun. I really liked them. There were a couple of them that didn't really stand out that much to me, which is unfortunate because they're the main ones. Epona is great. We meet her in the cage fighting, which is really fun. But the other characters like Maeve and Ash were kind of they just didn't really do it for me. I wasn't a huge fan of either of them. So, but it's okay because all the other characters made up for it. The antagonists of this book are the King, and I won't give away who he is because it's kind of a spoiler, and then the Tauntaun, which are the King's kind of like police. So, the other thing about this book that I need to talk about is the romance aspect, and the romance between Jack and Saba is done really, really well. I hate those books where within like the first 2 pages you're like, yep, that's gonna happen. And this book wasn't like that. We met Jack and I knew, we know something's gonna happen. There are definitely like hints to it and there are parts of the plot that you just wouldn't be the book without that happening. But what we didn't know was how it was gonna happen or when it was gonna happen. And there were a lot of times, Saba is one of those characters who, she's never met a boy who is her own age. And so meeting Jack is kind of like one of her first experiences with that. She's never met anyone her own age besides her brother. So love doesn't really play into the picture for her. Her parents were only in love for 9 years of her life because her mother died. And for her, love is her father wasting away from basically insanity because her mother's dead. So to her, love is kind of this crazy, scary thing that she's not sure she wants to deal with. And she doesn't know how to handle the feelings she's having. And so when Jack finally, shows up into the picture, it's very confusing for her. And that definitely plays a huge role in the development of their relationship. So I loved that. Jack is super fantastic and wonderful. And he's wonderful in such a way that isn't like, oh, he's perfect. It's like, he's flawed in ways that complement her flaws. And he's flawed in the same way. They're both very similar and yet very different people. And I love the way their romance forms around the story. Because the story wouldn't be the story without the romance, but the romance couldn't happen without the story. And I find that in YA fiction, far too much of the time, a romance is shoved into a story where it doesn't belong, or a story is formed in order for the romance to occur. It's the story takes a back seat, and I hate that because the story is what I go into a book to read. The romance is just kind of like a nice perk. And for this book, I didn't find that either was true because the romance just fits so well with the story. And I didn't find myself going, ugh, when are we going to get to the next part of the story? Or, oh my god, when's the romance going to happen? It was like, I was excited the whole time because there was so much development happening. And I can't say enough good things about this book. Oh my god, I love it so much. I'm going to have to buy a copy because this is from the library and I need to return it. But this book is wonderful. I absolutely recommend it to everyone, and I mean everyone. It has elements of romance, it has elements of dystopian, elements of post-apocalyptic. It's even kind of a western at the same time. It's just so good, and it's got strong female characters and strong male characters, and I was okay with it. The feminist in me was okay with the strong male characters, which is saying a lot. So everyone go read this book. Blood Red Road, Moira Young. Seriously, go read it. If any of you have read this book, I would love to hear what you have to say. I would love to talk to you about it because, oh my god, so good! And if any of you have read the second book, I would definitely like to hear whether or not it is as good or worth reading. And is there a third book, or are there just 2? And also, what's the deal with the freaking covers? Because this cover is gorgeous, and the other ones are really ugly with like a silhouette of a chick on the front with like a gun holster or something. And I'm just like, oh, really? No, I don't want it. Anyway, if you haven't read this book, go read it. If you have, tell me what you think in the comments below and suggest me books like it because if everything I read was like this, I would be a happy person forever. So, I will see you guys next time. Bye.